Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Whether your politics are left, right, or center, one thing is certain. We are living in uncertain times. Be it local, regional, domestic, or international, uncertainty seems to be the rule of the day. There might be areas of governing where uncertainty is bearable, but public safety is not one of them. At ABNY, since our founding, we have always cared deeply about keeping our city safe, not just for ourselves and our community here in this room, but for every New Yorker, families on our streets, kids in playgrounds, our workforce commuting to jobs, our most vulnerable neighbors, and of course, our millions and millions of visitors. Public safety is job one of government, and we owe a debt of gratitude to those who risk their lives to protect ours. Those very special public servants deserve a very special leader, and they have one in our very special guest today. So we are ecstatic that Jessica Tisch accepted the job to be the NYPD Commissioner, and we're thrilled to have her here this morning. Before I turn the stage over to the Commissioner, I'd like to take a moment to welcome the public officials who are joining us here today. There are quite a few, so I would just ask that you please hold your applause until the end. There's District Attorney Melinda Katz, New York City Council Member Julie Menin, Deputy Mayors Maria Springer-Torres, Anna Almanzar, Mira Yoshi, Camille Joseph Varlock, Fabian Levy, Tiffany Raspberry, Ann Williams-Isom, and Commissioners Jimmy Otto, Robert Tucker, and of course our Chancellor and longtime ABNY Board Member of CUNY, Felo Rodriguez. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your service. Now on to our main event. At ABNY, we followed Commissioner Tisch's career for a long time. The integrity she has brought to public service, the high expectations she holds for the people around her are only exceeded by the expectations she holds for herself. And that really gives us all confidence. We have witnessed her ability to get the gears of government moving. Text to 911. It languished for years until Commissioner Tisch got it done at the city's Department of Information, Technology, and Telecommunications. Putting trash into containers instead of piling them 10 feet high on the curb. She got it done when she ran the Department of Sanitation. And now you can actually walk down the street in Midtown and not have to navigate your way through mountains of trash. Getting every officer in the NYPD equipped with a smartphone and a body camera. That's part of her legacy from her earlier 12-year stint at the PD to bring the department into the 21st century. This is the caliber of public servant that the men and women of the NYPD need and that the citizens of our city deserve. In the first quarter, since she took on the job of PC, we can actually see the progress. Overall index crime is down. More cops are walking the trains and platforms. The city has instituted better tactics and assigned more personnel to respond to situations involving people with serious mental illness. Commissioner, we know you have a tough job. But please know that everybody in this room is ready to help you in any way we can. We're grateful for the job that you do. Please don't be afraid to ask. Everybody, please join me in giving a warm ABNY welcome to NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Steve, for that introduction and for giving me the opportunity to address the board, the staff, and the membership of ABNY here today. For more than 5 decades, the Association for a Better New York has improved all aspects of life in this city. In that time, you helped usher in one of the most dramatic urban revitalizations in history. And through it all, you've never lost sight of what underpinned New York City's renewal in the 1970s and what is still the foundation of everything else we hope to accomplish here, which is, of course, public safety. Business, education, housing, social services, cultural institutions, everything stands on a foundation of public safety. And that foundation is built by the women and men of the New York City Police Department. Their work is at the center of our city's future. In the first week of this year, I joined Mayor Adams at a press conference where we went over the crime data from 2024. In many respects, the news was good. Overall index crime was down, with more than 3,600 fewer incidents reported than the previous year. Murders were at a 5-year low. Both shooting incidents and shooting victims were down for the third straight year citywide. And in Brooklyn, shootings were at their lowest level since CompStat began tracking them in the early 1990s. Major crime was down in our housing developments, and it was down in our transit system for the second straight year. This was movement in the right direction, but we knew that we could and we must do more. There were still stubborn pockets of violence in the city, and there was a sense that people still didn't feel safe. So we wasted no time in building on and enhancing our efforts to further drive down crime. And that work is leading to a meaningful course correction. With just a few days left in the month, February will mark the third straight month of double-digit declines in citywide index crime. After a 16% drop in December and a 17% drop in January. So far this year, overall major crime is down more than 15%, with significant reductions in 6 out of the 7 index categories. Crime is down across every city borough. It's down 12% in housing, and it's down 28% in our subways. Simply put, the crime reductions the women and men of the NYPD have delivered over the past quarter have been extraordinary. And if 2024 was a step in the right direction, then 2025 has so far been a leap forward. But why? How are we doing this? Well, it's not by accident or by circumstance or by doing more of the same. One way was to reimagine how the police department viewed and analyzed crime. And it went back to the greatest innovation in policing over the last century, CompStat. When CompStat was developed in the early 1990s, my mentor, Commissioner Bratton, was thinking about crime at the precinct level. But the average police precinct in New York City is quite large, and each one varies widely in size, in population, and land use. What was working in Midtown might not apply to Mott Haven. And 30 years ago, the data was less detailed and the process less defined. Now, though, with more powerful analytic tools and the capability for more sophisticated evaluation, we can be more precise than ever. And we can extend the transformation that CompStat began through the establishment of zones. The idea is to focus on much smaller geographical areas than precincts, specific street segments, portions of neighborhoods, even stretches of blocks that cross precinct borders. Wherever we see increases in crime, we analyze those spikes, and those areas become our zones. Hyperlocal, concentrated regions where we can maximize the effectiveness and efficiency of our deployments. These deployments are flexible and can quickly adapt to shifting conditions through the use of our mobile field forces. The idea is quite literally to flood the zone. In a world with limited resources, you can't flood the zone across a 4-square-mile precinct, and you don't need to. But you can do that across 10 problematic blocks. Every day, we are deploying about 650 additional officers to dozens of zones around the city. These deployments are not about targeting individuals. They are about combating crime exactly where it's happening. This is a focused, location-based, scalpel approach to crime, and the early returns are extremely encouraging. Over the first 8 weeks of 2025, major crime in our zones is down more than 30% overall, including a 36% decline in our 125th Street zone in northern Manhattan, a 42% reduction in our downtown Flushing zone, and a 30% drop in crime in the White Plains Road zone in the Bronx. And in our Roosevelt Avenue zone, major crime is down 40% compared to last year. Complex analysis establishes the zones, and then, just like they did in 1993, we put the cops on the dots. It's a data-driven model based on straightforward logic. Uniformed police presence drives down crime and disorder. And it's working above and below ground. With 472 stations, 6,712 subway cars, and 665 miles of mainline track, The New York City transit system is the largest and most traveled in the Western world. Every day, millions of people rely on the subway to get them where they need to go. And we know that the system will always be a bellwether for public safety in our city. Riders must be safe, and they must feel safe too. That's why, among my first major initiatives as police commissioner, I announced a 3-part transit safety plan. And I have a few updates on that plan for you this morning. First, to reiterate, Part 1 began with optimizing our resources to ensure that our deployments were as effective and efficient as possible. As a result of our analysis, more than 200 transit officers are assigned to daily, dedicated subway patrols in the highest crime stations in the system. And within those stations, our officers are posted away from the entrances and mezzanines and onto the actual trains and platforms where 78% of transit crime actually occurs. Part 2 was the reassignment of hundreds of officers from desk jobs and administrative work to transit patrol, which enables us to put 2 uniformed officers on every overnight train in the city. These cops are highly visible and move from one car to the next, addressing conditions as they encounter them. And I want to mention Governor Hochul was instrumental in funding this segment of the plan. I am grateful for her partnership and her investments in transit safety. Part 3 is about the transit system's rules themselves, and it is a meaningful, systemic shift in how we approach policing in transit. Over the past 10 years, prohibitions against taking up multiple seats, laying outstretched, smoking, drinking alcohol have not been consistently enforced. This increased the perception of an unsafe system, and it needed to change. So we piloted that change in Transit District 20 in Queens. We've added Transit District 34 in Brooklyn, and if these pilots are successful, we're looking to expand this program in the coming months. Our cops will not simply walk by someone who is violating the law and disrupting other passengers. We will correct the condition. This is not a dragnet. This is not harassment. And this also isn't about one person taking up 2 seats on a half-empty train. This is about restoring a sense of safety and order to the system. It is also a response to New Yorkers telling us that unchecked disorder makes them feel less safe on the train. And the truth is, this approach also allows the NYPD to address the random acts of violence that we have seen in our subways. Since this refocused enforcement began, about 32% of the encounters have resulted in an arrest, mostly because of open, active warrants, meaning that these people who are violating transit rules were being sought for other crimes they'd committed in the past. Of those people arrested, 31% were convicted felons, and all combined, they had nearly 3,600 priors, which is an average of 20 prior arrests per person. Prime example, 3 weeks ago, 25-year-old Matthew Leon was stopped on a 7 train in Flushing for lying across several seats, a violation which in the past the NYPD would not have consistently enforced. It's a minor infraction, and officers were prepared to issue him a summons and eject him from the system. But they soon discovered that he was wanted for 2 previous subway attacks, where he randomly punched 2 women in the face on an R train in Manhattan. And as officers were processing those assault arrests, Leon was connected to the forcible touching and sex abuse of 3 young schoolgirls in Ridgewood, which happened the same day as he was stopped on the 7 train. So Leon, a known recidivist for assault and other sex crimes, was caught and jailed again. The early data is promising. So far this year, major crime in transit is down another 28% from 2024, and it's 46% below pre-pandemic levels. And with focused deployments and consistent enforcement, we expect these crime numbers to continue falling. I also want to add our streets and our subways are not homeless shelters or psychiatric hospitals. And while we have a moral duty to provide services, we cannot do this work alone. We require strong partners, and the NYPD stands with the mayor and the governor in their legislative efforts to proactively address severe mental illness. It's also time to take a fresh look at something that ABNY has championed from its beginning, improving the quality of life of every New Yorker. As you know, crime and violence are major parts of the public safety equation, But when residents, businesses, and tourists are plagued by issues like out-of-control scooters and e-bikes, aggressive panhandling, unruly street vending, public urination, open-air drug use, and more, it makes them feel unsafe, and it gives the impression of chaos and disorder. To address this, the NYPD is overhauling its approach to quality of life enforcement, and our plan, which will be finalized and implemented over the coming months, begins with the creation of the Quality of Life Division, headed by a new chief of citywide quality of life. Instead of various units scattered throughout the department, we will have dedicated precinct officers assigned to newly formed Q teams. These teams will have strong, centralized leadership and be specially trained to handle and resolve these issues. And we're also developing QStat, which will track quality of life complaints the same way that CompStat tracks crime complaints. Our QStat meetings will keep us accountable, more accurately measure our effectiveness, and recenter our approach to public safety. And I want to be very straightforward about this. Quality of life enforcement is based on community complaints. It's about listening to the people in our neighborhoods who are calling 311 and pleading for someone to come and help them. Over the past 6 years, those calls nearly doubled. From 2018 to 2024, complaints about illegal parking have gone up 202%. Noise complaints are up 119%. Calls about homeless encampments are up 557%. And complaints about panhandling have increased by 2,783%. New Yorkers are clearly demanding that something be done. And make no mistake, this is not about zero-tolerance policing, which can be dangerous. While correcting these conditions, officers will always have discretion, and discretion starts with engagement. In New York City, it is clear that we don't have a surging crime problem, but we do have a surging recidivism problem. Compared to 2018, 2024 saw an unacceptable rise in the number of individuals arrested 3 or more times for the same crime in the same year. The increase was 61% for burglary, 64% for shoplifting, 71% for grand larceny, 83% for robbery, and 119% for auto theft. And when we look at felony assault, an index crime that was up in 2024, the increase was a staggering 147%. So why is this happening? Among the reasons are changes to New York state laws, enacted in 2020 that rendered our criminal justice system a high-speed revolving door, putting violent repeat offenders back on our streets over and over again. As the mayor and I have said, your cops are out there doing their jobs. And in 2024, they made the most felony arrests in 26 years. But before they can even finish that paperwork, their perp is back out on the street, immediately returned to the neighborhood and the people that they just victimized. It's demoralizing, it's unsustainable, and it defies common sense. And that's exactly the message that I carried to Albany this month, specifically as it relates to changes to the discovery law. Ultimately, we must put the focus back on crime victims. I've been working closely with the mayor on this, as well as the governor and our 5 DAs. And 2 weeks ago, I met with legislators in our state capital to send them a direct message. We must do better. It was a productive trip, and it appears that the message has finally made its way up the New York State Thruway into the halls of state government, and the drumbeat is breaking through. There is now acknowledgement of the recidivism and discovery problems we are facing in New York City, and that something has to give. The current discovery law has been manipulated by the defense bar to get cases dropped, and it is high time that we advocate for crime victims as hard as they advocate for criminal defendants. We have been very clear on the specific changes that need to be made to the discovery law, and we cannot applaud any changes that do not directly address the problem. This is not a time for half measures. And it's also important to know the changes that we've put forward in no way retreat from the underlying spirit of the criminal justice reforms of 2020, including the notion that those accused deserve to see all the available relevant evidence against them, and they shouldn't be surprised by anything at the 11th hour. But the 2020 reforms had unintended consequences that put the safety of New Yorkers at risk, and these unintended consequences have to be addressed. Changing the criminal justice laws alone, while necessary, is insufficient. Too often, our prosecutorial partners decline cases or effectively dismiss cases through adjournments and contemplation of dismissal or ACDs. I have met individually with many of our DAs on this issue, and those productive discussions will continue so that we can forge a safer path forward. There's always room for improvement. Our DAs are our most important partners, and our work together undoubtedly makes our city safer. But any blanket policy that makes the revolving door spin faster must be reevaluated. Here's an example. On February 20th, just 6 days ago, Tyreek Martin was arrested for horrifically assaulting and attempting to rape a woman on a subway train. Martin has an extensive history of unprovoked assaults, including of a mother who was pushing her 2-year-old child in a stroller, a school crossing guard, and a woman on a staircase in a subway station whom he punched in the face. Martin failed to appear in court for the punch and was wanted on an active warrant. When the NYPD found him on February 15th, he was arrested for violating the rules of the transit system and the misdemeanor of aggravated harassment. But then the district attorney's office declined to prosecute the case. In their words, in the interests of justice. The judge then vacated Martin's bench warrant for punching the woman in the face. And 4 days later, Martin assaulted and attempted to violently rape a woman on a subway train. What are we doing here? How is not prosecuting a violent repeat offender in the interests of justice? This just can't keep happening. Because here's another example. On the morning of February 18th, during the execution of a search warrant in Lower Manhattan, an ESU detective was shot in the shoulder. Fortunately, he is expected to make a full recovery, but it should never have happened in the first place because the perp, a career criminal with multiple prior arrests for gun possession and narcotics, should not have been out on our streets. When he shot our officer, Edwin Rivera was out on parole for the 4th time. And when he was arrested last November, which could and should have easily led to the revocation of his parole, the DA's office effectively dismissed the case with an ACD, ensuring that there would be no review of his parole status and putting him right back into the community. And then 8 days ago, he shot a cop. We were lucky that morning, but we shouldn't have to be lucky because we shouldn't ever be put in a situation that is so easily prevented. Remember, these are 2 examples from just last week, but we've been seeing the effect of these policies for a while now. Toothpaste and laundry detergent locked up in cages on pharmacy shelves, mom and pop stores closing because they can't recover from shoplifting losses, people brazenly stealing from our retailers, really taking their time with it and calmly walking out of the store without a care in the world. All of this is at least in part due to the removal of serious consequences for certain misdemeanors. I am channeling the voice of virtually every NYPD cop and everyday New Yorkers when I say, enough is enough. Criminals in New York City including violent repeat offenders, continue to be given every courtesy, and the people of this city suffer as a result. It's happening at the local level, too. Just 2 days ago, the New York City Council held a hearing to abolish the criminal group database, a critical investigative tool focused on violent gangs and crews. Just last month, we stood with the Queens DA and announced a takedown involving members of a street gang called Trenda Aragua. We seized 34 illegal guns in that operation and made multiple arrests. We took violent gang members off the street who had inflicted unspeakable pain, suffering, and fear in our community. And we closed that investigation in large part because of the criminal group database that the City Council seeks to remove. As the mayor has said, abolishing it would be quite obviously a huge mistake. We look forward to working with the Speaker on this and all other legislation that impacts our public safety. Think about it. When you see someone standing against the wall on a subway platform out of fear, it is partially due to the mental health crisis. But let's be honest about this. It is also the result of New York State laws, New York City laws, and internal prosecutorial policies that handcuff the police, that expose them to untenable risk, and that allow criminals to prey on victims again and again and again. The good news is much of this is supremely solvable. My approach to government work has always been to identify problems and find tailored solutions. And in this case, many of the solutions are as obvious as the problem. Speaking to this group today, I would be remiss to not briefly mention immigration enforcement. I have been consistent on this from the beginning. The NYPD will continue to target criminals, regardless of their immigration status, including through our work with local, state, and federal task force partners, as we always have. But the NYPD will not participate in civil immigration enforcement, period, in accordance with the law. The work of this department certainly makes our city safer, but we need more cops. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The NYPD is in a hiring crisis, and this is not a budget problem. Mayor Adams has given us all the resources we need and greenlit every class we wanted to bring in, but the applicants just aren't there. It wasn't that long ago when people would wait years to get the call to join the academy, and every incoming class was full to capacity. Now we are practically begging people to take the exam. And when they pass, we are scrambling to get them hired as quickly as possible. So what happened? First and foremost, we are still seeing the very real impact of the defund and anti-police movement. A lot of the rhetoric aimed at our police is vile, and the pendulum has swung too far away from what I consider to be the most important and noble job anyone could do. And we must swing it back. Because it's quite simple. More cops on patrol make our city safer. 7 years ago, the NYPD had 37,000 uniformed officers for a city of about 8.1 million people. Now we have 33,000 and 8.3 million New Yorkers. The work of increasing our headcount began with the new class of more than 1,000 recruits that I swore in last month. The last time the NYPD hired such a big class was nearly a decade ago. But these much-needed additions are just the beginning. We know we have more work to do. Part of that work is continually evaluating our staffing policies. And today I am announcing changes that will improve the way we recruit, hire, and train our officers. Currently, the NYPD requires at least 60 college credits to enter the academy, which is a higher standard than most peer agencies who do not require any college at all. In 2023, this requirement led to the disqualification of 29% of NYPD applicants, meaning we turned away 2,275 potential officers. We can't afford to do that any longer. So in line with similar decisions that Mayor Adams has made last year to recruit more municipal workers, I made the difficult decision to reduce the college credit requirement from 60 down to 24. At the same time, we're increasing the college credits earned in the police academy from 36 to 45. Along with increased academic rigor in the academy, we're raising the physical standards as well. With the mayor's support, we are reinstating the mile-and-a-half run as a graduation requirement, putting more focus on our officers' health and fitness. I know these changes will allow the NYPD to recruit more quality candidates to serve as police officers, while increasing the physical standards and maintaining academic rigor that continue to surpass what most other police departments require. At the end of the day, I want this to be a job that our officers are proud of, that their families are proud of, and one that they want to pass down to future generations. There was a time when policing was the family business, and it needs to be again. Part of that pride of being a police officer is appreciating the incredibly noble purpose they serve. Public safety is the most fundamental obligation a government has to its people, and the police are the keepers of that promise. But to do this, a law enforcement agency needs two critical things: the public trust and unimpeachable integrity. And it all begins with strong, ethical leadership. In my career, I have set high standards for myself and for those who work with and for me, and I have been very candid that I expect all members of my executive team to rise to meet these high standards. So immediately upon taking this job and at the mayor's direction, I began a full review of every bureau, division, and unit in the NYPD. We would enhance what was working well and fix what wasn't. Over the past 3 months, we've made more than a dozen changes to our top leadership, matching the right skills and experience with the right roles. We overhauled the Internal Affairs Bureau, both in leadership and personnel. We returned about 1,000 cops from administrative roles back to patrol. We initiated system-wide changes to our overtime policies designed to prevent misuse and to ensure compliance with NYPD regulations. And we amended the NYPD's vehicle pursuit policy to give our officers clearer guidance and smarter protocols. We will continue to make changes, both in personnel and policy whenever necessary, in our unceasing effort to improve service and make our city safer. That's what New Yorkers demand, it's what they deserve, and it's what we will deliver as a department, and I will commit to delivering personally. I love working in government, and especially city government, which is the closest part of government to people, and is the most direct line to solving the problems that they need solved. Throughout my government work, I have never accepted the status quo when the status quo doesn't serve New Yorkers. That was our mindset 10 years ago, when the police department needed innovative technology to keep pace with the modern world, body cameras and smartphones for every cop, tablets in every police vehicle, and cutting-edge camera and sensor networks that have revolutionized the way that every cop on the job performs their duties. It's how we built a citywide vaccine system, got 500,000 iPads into the hands of New York City school children at home, performed online marriage ceremonies, and delivered up to 1 million meals a day to food-insecure New Yorkers who couldn't leave their homes during the height of the pandemic. It was our approach at DSNY when we revolutionized the way the city thought about and dealt with its trash. And incidentally, there was a lot of drama about forcing people to put their trash in containers, but guess what? It worked. Rat complaints are down nearly 30% this year. And historically, rat complaints only go in one direction, up. But again, I will always challenge the status quo when it is not working, and we're continuing to do that now at the NYPD. It's like solving a giant real-world jigsaw puzzle. And one of the great blessings of my life has been choosing this career in public service, where I essentially get to work on solving big problems to help millions of people in the most important city in the world. There is no higher privilege. The jigsaw puzzles that we work on at the office don't just make a pretty picture. They make people's lives better, they serve the greater good, and they prove in the process that government can be great. I believe in that greatness, and I have great faith in the nobility of our police officers. It is certainly the honor of my lifetime to work alongside them, and to hold up my part of the bargain, I will offer them data-driven strategy, a lot of stubbornness, a fair dose of chutzpah, unbridled and, yes, obsessive determination, and a fundamental belief that if we can do better, we should and we will do better. I am a public servant, not a politician, but I have noticed that policy is best set by the people. And as Mayor Adams has said, the people are clear. We need to focus on public safety, give our police the resources they need, bring common sense back to our criminal justice laws, and empower our courts to keep dangerous criminals off our streets. And I will not stop until these things are delivered for New Yorkers. I know you are with me. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Thank you for your 5 decades of partnership as we work to improve the lives of every New Yorker. And thank you for your continued support of the women and the men of the NYPD.
I guess I want to start with, you seem to have such clarity, which is awesome to see in a world where there is so little of it. Can I ask about where that comes from? Like, either is there a commissioner who you look towards, who kind of taught you this, or you seek inspiration for, that you model yourself after?
So in my life, I have had access to the finest education anyone could imagine: college, law school, business school. But truly, the most incredible learning opportunity for me was the opportunity to work directly for two giants in the field of policing, and that's Commissioner Ray Kelly and Commissioner Bill Bratton, both of whom are the most extraordinary leaders with very different leadership styles. In Commissioner Kelly, I learned a lot about command and control and order. He built one of the most incredible and nimble counterterrorism forces in the entire world. Under Commissioner Bratton, I learned a lot about creativity and encouraging people who work with me and for me to bring forward ideas that can change the department and the city.
You started in counterterrorism. It's a subject one hears a lot less about right now. I guess I'd ask, is that still a real focus of the department and a concern?
Counterterrorism is a major focus of the department and still certainly a concern. Our Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, the number of officers that we have assigned to that bureau, is at the highest number that it has ever been in, and that bureau is under the incredible leadership of a brilliant person named Deputy Commissioner Rebecca Weiner. At the NYPD, we take a layered approach to counterterrorism. We have assets that you see and assets that you don't see, and we work very closely with all of our federal, state, and local partners now more than ever. Since 9/11, there have been 70 terror plots targeted at New York City, and we have to be honest about this. We live in the richest terror target in the world. But what I have to say to you about that is the men and women of the NYPD are as committed as they have ever been to thwarting those plots, especially in the heightened environment that we live in post-October 7th, and that work continues. And one of my most important jobs is to make sure that the men and women who work in intelligence and counterterrorism have all of the resources and tools they need to do their most important work.
You mentioned earlier an attempted rape on the subway. Of all the major crime stats, they've all gone down except for one, and that is rape. Can you talk a bit about why that's the case and what the PD is doing?
Sure. It's definitely something that we are tracking, and you are correct that rape is the one major index category that remains up in New York City. And there are two reasons for that. The first is, I think, a very important change made to New York State law about rape, which broadens the definition of rape so that more survivors can come forward. And of course, we always encourage survivors to come forward. That's the big thing. But the second piece of it is that we know that about 80% of women around this country are victims of some sort of sexual violence in their lives. And we also know that only approximately 25% of survivors have ever come forward. So under Mayor Adams' leadership for the past several years, we have done a major push to get victims of sexual violence to come forward to the police, including through stationing our police in our family justice centers, where historically survivors were only able to report domestic violence incidents, but now they are able to report incidents of sexual assault. And so while, of course, we don't want to see any major index crime category going up, we do think that the increase that we see in the reports of rape are a sign, at least in part, that our efforts to get victims of sexual violence to come forward are beginning to show some fruit.
Thank you. One last question. We care a lot about discovery reform. It has been around for a while, seems to have a bit more attention on it at the moment. I think a lot thanks to your voice, the mayor's voice, and the DA's. What can we do to help? Because we're in the final run here.
We are in the final leg here, and I was very encouraged to see changes to discovery be included in the governor's budget, and the governor has certainly shown a lot of leadership here. The mayor got myself and the deputy mayor for public safety and the 5 district attorneys in the city of New York together and encouraged us to come up with joint proposals for changes to the discovery laws. And I'm proud to tell you that there is consensus and agreement on very specific changes that are needed that will create a massive course correction in the problems we are seeing, which is crazy dismissal of cases based on things that have nothing to do with the merits of that case. And so we are doing now, as a coalition, a big joint push up in Albany. That was part of the reason for my trip up to Albany, the mayors, the deputy mayors, and I encourage everyone in this room, and particularly through the leadership of ABNY, which I know can be very effective, to keep bringing the heat up there. Because as I said in my remarks, this is not a time for half measures. And I personally will not applaud any changes to the discovery law that do not address the underlying issues.
Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for your voice and what you're doing. You're a great.
Thank you.